name is Dr. Alexa Chilcutt. I am the director of the public speaking program, and I am basically a trainer of graduate teaching assistants, train and manage them to run and administer performance labs for the public speaking program, which we teach about 2,000 students a year. So our labs are very different than probably some of the labs or the courses that you'll be teaching. So that's why we have a nice variety of professors up here that work with graduate teaching assistants. We're going to introduce ourselves, and then we're going to start giving tips about what we think makes a successful graduate teaching assistant in the lab, and hopefully some helpful tips. And then we'll try and end at about 20 till so that you can ask us some questions, and we can hopefully answer them as well as to the best of our ability as possible. All right, the first tip that I'm going to give you is professionalism. Professionalism. And this encompasses everything. And let me go ahead and say, we have been doing this together for the past couple of years, and so we almost know that whatever I say, Lisa's going to have a little different something to add to it, and so is Murray. So we're going to be reiterating the same themes, just in different aspects. But professionalism, make sure that you understand that the first day that you walk into that lab, that first impression is the most important impression for the first couple of weeks. You need to make the best first impression possible. How long does it take to make a first impression? Anyone? Yes, they say 30 seconds to a minute, someone knows whether they're going to hire you or not. Instantaneously, 7 to 17 seconds, someone has made an impression about you. They have perceived things, attributes about who you are. Now, what have you had the opportunity to do in 7 to 17 seconds? Maybe introduce yourself. Not a whole lot. Most of it is visual. Most of it is visual, that very first impression. We'll talk about a lot of other things with professionalism, but just make sure that that first day that you look the part. Not only are you going to be the part, but you're going to look the part so that they know that you're the person in charge. Because many of you, how many of you have just graduated from undergraduate, come straight to graduate school, right? So you're 23, 22, 23. You're going to have seniors in your class. There's only going to be maybe a year difference between the two of you. You need to create that professional distance in that first impression. All right, Lisa.
I'm Lisa McKinney, and I am the coordinator of all the accounting labs. Ooh, I know accounting's exciting. Please calm down. But we have 24 labs, and I've been teaching there for 11 years, so I kind of get how to mess up a lab and how to do it well. But my tip is going to be share your passion and your personality with the class. There is a reason you chose biology or physics. Why would you do that? Or accounting, yay! Or speech or communications. There is a reason you chose this and you love it. And class does not have to be boring and dull. Think about it. You've been to class where somebody goes, roar, 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 and then you've been to class where you truly feel the contagious atmosphere. I have been to classes on geology, which I have no interest in, but the guy teaching the class made me think rocks are kind of cool. You know what I'm saying? That makes class fun. Now, some of you are more outgoing than others. Some of you are quieter. Passion doesn't have to be completely going nuts and having a clown nose on and playing hip-hop music. That's how I like to do it, but not everybody does. Sometimes it's just, for example, maybe your way of doing it is, man, there's this cool thing going on in biology right now that's in the news I've got to tell you about. Or let me tell you this cool discovery people are talking about in physics, or this, we found a crab nebula, whatever that is, okay? You know, I don't know what that is. It's on the beach. But, you know, you dig this stuff you're doing, right? And you don't like other stuff. So bring you into the room, and don't just feel like you just have to do those problems or that chemistry experiment or that physics experiment. Share who you are. Don't be afraid to share it, and you're going to have a more rewarding experience sharing who you are. So bring personality and your passion, because that's why you're in this graduate field.
I am Dr. Murray Silverstone. Dr. Murray Silverstone. There's a delay. Dr. Murray Silverstone. I'm in the physics and astronomy department. I teach a lot of introductory physics classes, and I have been the lab coordinator for astronomy. So for 4 years now, I know a lot about teaching both to non-majors and to majors. So hopefully I can bring some of that breadth to you. In physics, we like to make a lot of analogies to things that people will have experienced. Actually, in astronomy, when we can as well, because a lot of the stuff you teach in astronomy, it's hard to wrap your mind and your fingers around and think about. So what I'm going to do today, or this morning, is to try to use an analogy of a layer cake with 3 layers. And maybe that'll stick in some of your brains. You'll remember some of the advice that we're giving. So in this layer cake, I'll just set it up for now. The top layer is the university, the professor you're working with, the person who's in charge of your labs, where you have to send grades, for instance, up the chain, as it were. The bottom part are the students you're teaching, the ones you're trying to inspire, the ones that you can play a cheap joke on, or just give a cheap joke to try to get them to laugh. I think we've had a few of those already, and of course, for those of you who are on time, I'm very proud of you. I'm sure those of you who are on time saw I came in late. Never do that. That goes into professionalism. I mean, do what it takes to be there on time and be prepared. The middle layer, what really can be the challenge, and also the joy, is the pedagogy. How you're going to teach your students on the bottom layer to then get the grades and assessments to send up to the top layer. So I'll have some other pointers to talk about, and I'll try to relate the 3 layers together, and then we're going to stab our fork into that layer cake and see what it tastes like.
All right. So back to professionalism. And if I've been trying to think of 3 Ps, kind of like Murray's cake here. I've been thinking of my own, what can I make you remember? So my 3 Ps are professionalism, being prepared, and personable. And personable does not mean, it almost kind of goes under professionalism, but what you're going to realize in the next 2 days as you talk to legal and all kind of other things, is that being personable is not being their friend, but being personable is more about being approachable as an instructor. So, but let me start, because I know we're going to get there eventually. Let me begin again with professionalism and some things that are really going to help you. Your name may not be on the course schedule that the students have yet. So if they're looking at public speaking, it says Chilcutt, I'm the lecturer, and then it really has TBA for the lab. Now, what's going to happen is the first day of class, you're going to go in, you're going to make a fabulous impression, you're going to be prepared, which is part of professionalism, you're going to look the part, you're going to speak to them in a very professional manner, but they're going to know your name on that first day, and they're going to go back to their computer, and they're going to Google you, and then they're going to try and friend you, which we're not going to do. And so what you might want to do, prep, go back to your Facebook, check your privacy settings, make sure what picture is on the front of your Facebook. Are you holding a red Solo cup? Which is fine, you're all of age, but realize that that's what they're going to think about you, okay? So what picture comes up when somebody can get into your Facebook, Google your name, find what kind of videos, if anybody has done anything on Vine. I made my TAs do this, and they were, oh my gosh, I didn't realize that was going to pop up. It did. So go back and start editing your professional profile. Look at what they're going to see when they Google your name. Go ahead and prevent things ahead of time professionally. Go in and talk to them about the professional distance that you want to create with them, that you're going to be prepared, but that you're also approachable. You want them to come to you with any issues that they might have, that you're going to try and work with them within the realm of what the rules and the guidelines are for the course, but that also, should they go back and Google you, that you're not going to accept friend requests. This is a big thing, because they want to know more about you. You've done it. You hit Rate My Professor and you read up about them and you try and friend them on LinkedIn or connect to them. So go ahead and kind of quill that at the beginning and say, hey guys, and this is the other thing, the people who are in charge of you, your directors, always blame it on us. We will take the blame for anything. My director will not allow me to accept any friend requests. And it'll save you from a world of
possible troubles down the road. Okay.
All right. Taking from Murray's cake, I'd like to say that teaching is like a giant beer. No, I'm just kidding. And then you have the beginning of the beer, and then you have the line. No, just kidding. My next tip would be know your position. And that is you are almost like the cake. You are above the students, but the buck stops with the director. That's awesome. What I mean by that is don't be pushed around by any of the people in your class. You're going to have students that are aggressive and want to run the show. You've seen how classes can get out of control sometimes. You come in there and you own that. That's your class. And if you always have the right, I'm sure every director would say this, if somebody is doing something inappropriate and disrupting, they need to go. You absolutely have the right. So I would say kind of twofold, know what your rights are and that you are in control. But the great part of it is, at the end of the day, it's not your problem. I kind of view that as the best position you can be in. We are giving you the power to control your classroom, and that is your setting. You own it. You tell somebody, put your phone away. You get to do that. That's awesome. You get to tell other people what to do, which is my favorite thing. But again, it's constantly, you can constantly say, my director won't let me do that. My director said that. The syllabus says that. The syllabus says that. So you have, to me, the best of both worlds. You are in control of your environment and your setting, and you are the boss of that little microcosm, okay? But at the end of the day, troublesome people can be sent up the chain, and we are totally fine with that. You try to maintain the syllabus and go, the syllabus says if you are 10 minutes late, you cannot take the exam. And if they're still bothering you, you know where to send them, right? So kind of view it as you've got the control, but at the end of the day, the buck does stop with us, which is kind of cool for you.
Okay, we've actually covered a lot of the things I was going to say about the top layer, but I do want to mention one other piece of that and then get on to the bottom layer, to the students. So the top layer, grading, right? So there's an expectation between you and your advisor department, whoever is going to handle the grades. Make sure that you can impose fair but strict limits. You can be sympathetic if someone has an issue and it's an issue you don't know how to handle, definitely send that up the chain. But definitely show sympathy, but that doesn't mean the student's going to be right. That doesn't mean that you can change the rules, okay? Deadlines, make sure, and professionalism, if there's a deadline and let's say there's a problem, you can't make that deadline. You can't get your grade in for the midterm on time or something. Tell the lab coordinator, tell the professor in your class right away, as soon as possible, because it's all about expectations in that direction too. So the professor or whoever needs to get those grades on time can then plan and adjust for whatever the problem is for that deadline. So try to keep them, but if you can't, absolutely tell the person responsible. All right, let's get a little bit more to the bottom, to the students, to setting expectations for students. Usually the syllabus will do that, but first day of lab, make sure you talk to the students about what they're supposed to be doing, what their role is in the lab, what your role is in the lab, why the lab is important to learning whatever the topics are. And for every lab, make sure the students understand why they're doing what they're doing. If they understand why, they're going to do a lot better job and actually get a lot more out of what's going on there. But really, it's all about the one word, expectations. So make that rule the patterns and what it is you're going to be doing with your students, setting the expectations and meeting them.
I'm going to go off of Murray's expectations. The first goal of communication is to create shared meaning. And that's in a communication textbook, right? Create shared meaning. It sounds extremely simple. It is not. It is not simple. You cannot assume anything. The reality is you cannot assume that they've read the syllabus. You cannot assume that they've read the book. You cannot assume, you can expect them to, and you can tell them that you're going to expect them to. You cannot assume that they know what you're going to be doing that day, that they've read the schedule. And I would go back to what Marie is saying. On the first day of lab, go over the expectations. What is the course going to be doing? What is the lab about? What are the goals and objectives of the lab? Go over some of the the syllabus expectations that you think they might get hung up on or might not think about, or if there's an absence or an attendance policy that is extremely important for your class, articulate it. Talk to them about it, because it's much better, once again, to create that shared meaning ahead of time than try and go back and troubleshoot later on as the semester goes by. So understanding creating shared meaning is a good thing. Also in lab, as in public speaking, you've heard the old axiom, tell them what you're going to tell them, and then tell them what you told them. That's a great thing for a lab instructor. Today, this is what we're going to do. By the end of today, this is what we're going to have accomplished. You do it. At the end, hey, guys, guess what? This is what we did today. Hopefully you learned A, B, and C. So that is going to help with memory. And people like to know what's going to go on. So make sure that, and that kind of goes in with preparation as well, but prepare to articulate the expectations and what's really going to be important about that lab ahead of time. Don't assume anything.
Kind of going in a different direction, something I've learned over the years is you've probably heard there was a book written, Don't Sweat the Petty Things, or Don't Pet the Sweaty Things. Someone has made a joke about that. But don't be too sensitive. Students are going to take out frustrations on you, and they are going to hurt your feelings, that's women, and make men mad. And then some women get mad and some men get their feelings hurt. We're all different. But, one response is someone is going to, get ready for this, say something that you find disrespectful at some point. The reason may be that they are having a hard time with something, whatever. It doesn't matter what the reason is. You're going to get criticism. When you are in charge of something, someone is going to lash out at you. And what I'm saying is be ready for that and don't let it crush you. It could go so far as, I don't know, it may or may not happen to you. People might personally attack something about you. You may be told you don't know what you're doing or something. And that doesn't mean you don't know what you're doing. It means someone is very frustrated and you are their target. So it's going to happen. I don't really know anyone that's ever taught a lab where didn't get any garbage from someone. Wouldn't you agree? There's going to be students that struggle, and those are the ones that are going to give you a hard time and argue. You just have to know who you are, that you're doing the best you can. You were chosen because you're the best at what you do. And, talk to your director sometimes about it. I enjoy when my TAs come and say, man, you're not going to believe what this student did. And then I go, oh, I got 8 more stories. Bring it on. And then we just go at it and they're like, that happened to you? I'm like, oh, you have no idea. I mean, it can get, people can hurt your feelings. There's a lot of good students that are going to make your job very enjoyable. You've heard it, like 1% are going to drive you nuts. And you're going to wish that you could bury them under the sand. But, you got to focus on the 99 or whatever the number is, or the people that are paying attention. Someone is going to fall asleep while you feel you are talking and explaining the greatest concept of all time in accounting or physics or speech, and they are going to completely pass out at their desk. So what? Their problem, not yours. You do the best you can. You know you're doing a good job, and know that garbage is going to come. Think about being the President of the United States. He gets the most criticism of anyone, right? He handles that, right? Whether he's doing a good or bad job in your mind, in his mind, he's doing a good job and he owns it, right? That's you. You own your job, and you're going to get, the higher you get up in the world, the more people are going to be criticizing you. To not receive criticism, good or bad, is to hide in your house. That's the only thing you can do. Never work with people. And as a TA, people are your job, right?
And of course, I'm sure we'll get into this a little bit more. If you find that some of that criticism is a little abusive, or there's a real problem that's brewing, definitely send that up the chain. That's what we're here for. We're there to help you. We got your backs, okay? So make sure, it hits that. A little bit more about the middle, about the bottom, then we'll get to the middle. So the students, the ones you're trying to inspire and teach, and at least make sure they understand why it is they're doing what they're doing, try to run through your labs and see from an alien point of view. Here's some astronomy kind of stuff leaking its way in. But what would someone who's never seen this material before, what are they going to get caught up on? What is going to be incomprehensible to them? So that way you can guide them and try to get them over those hurdles before they happen. There will be things you have not anticipated that are going to go wrong, and you're there in part to help get students back in the right direction when it does go wrong, but at least if you can try to anticipate some of it, that's going to make your job so much easier, and the experience for those students so much better too. Middle, pedagogy, how you teach. It turns out that at least in physics and other sciences, the research says that being lectured to doesn't work. You have to get students talking. Now, of course, some of these disciplines, like communication, is about talking. So one of the great things about all these labs is that students tend to work in groups and they tend to talk naturally. That's fantastic. You want more of that. What you want them to do is bounce ideas off each other when they have partial understanding of some of the topics. As they discuss it, that will help solidify understanding, and they'll even troubleshoot by themselves. And as you listen to these discussions, you'll be able to hear whether students are on the right track and wrong track, and you'll be able to guide them and direct them and do a much better job. And again, they're going to get a lot more out of it. But promote student discussion. In my lectures, I use clickers, and I try to get clicker opportunities where it's clear that part of the class gets it and part doesn't, and get them to talk in the lecture format. But in the lab format, you can almost naturally, or it's even built in, get those students talking and try to listen, try to see what's going on in your classroom, and that's going to make everything work out so much better. So that's my beginning of the middle layer there.
Okay. And talking about preparation, as Murray said, running through your lab ahead of time. We know, because I'm sure we have been there as well, I have, that when I was in graduate school and I was a later in life return to graduate school person who, you know, at this point had teenagers years ago, and so I was juggling getting a PhD, teaching 3 classes, and making sure that I was done at 3 o'clock to run and pick up teenagers and go sit at the softball field and do everything else. And it was huge time management. It was just incredible. And yes, sometimes I would have to run away for the weekend and tell my husband, peace out, I'll see you in 3 days, because I had things to do. But you need to realize that you are not the first person in this world who's had to balance that. You have your own work that you need to do. Your courses are incredibly important. That's what you're here to focus on. But you also have a job. This is a job. And part of that professionalism is being prepared. Don't wait till the last minute to look over the lab, because you're going to forget things. Guess what? Technology is not going to work. If it can happen, it's going to happen. Make sure that you get into your room earlier, that if it's at all possible, and make sure that the technology is working, that you've got the equipment that you need, that, you know, whatever it is. But make sure that you're not walking into that lab unprepared, because as soon as you do that the first time, you don't know what kind of, here are some of my new TAs, you don't know what kind of activity you're going to be doing with the students. You don't know what concepts are most important to reiterate with them. You haven't figured out how you can get them talking amongst themselves. You don't have your paper, whatever it is, the first time you do that, you have dashed your credibility with them. So make sure that you are prepared and that you can walk in, and then it's a kind of a seamless production for them. So being prepared is crucial.
I'm kind of stealing from a communications textbooks, but know your audience. Observe and watch your audience and adjust as you need to. So I may have an idea of what I want to do today, and I've been told what I need to do today. But if you're rushing through something and nobody's getting it, nobody wins here. Sometimes you just have to look at people and you'll see that furrowed brow or that disinterested glaze. Try to get them back in. Try to have them, don't feel like you have to race through stuff. I believe your director would much be more appreciative if they got quality out of the lab than just racing through something. And you can always tell your director, we just couldn't get to this or whatever, but you do the best you can to do what is assigned for the day, but at the same time, watch what's going around you. Are you going too slow? Is everybody going, or are people completely lost? Back up. So you are not in a little island talking. You are engaging with people. So it's an old school thing I learned 25 years ago in a public speaking class here was know your audience and watch them.
Okay, let's take our forks, stick them in that layer cake. We're gonna mix up a few of the layers here and taste all the flavors together. The top and middle layers, let's go with that. The top, let's say, is the professor. The middle is how you're teaching, and actually how the professor is teaching if your lab is linked to a lecture class. I would say one of the biggest tips, one of the most useful things that was, from my experience when I started as a TA, is to attend the lectures. You can see what the students are seeing. You can hear what they're hearing. Things are going to pop in your head of difficult concepts, things you don't think that the students got in the lecture. That's a natural thing for you to be able to discuss in your lab and help your students. So absolutely, if it can fit in your schedule, if it doesn't, but there's another professor who teaches a similar class, you might want to at least see what other professors are doing, even if it's not the one that your students are attending, but try the best you can to go to that class. You can then also give the professor feedback in the class and say, hey, I think the students didn't get this. I can try in the lab, but maybe you want to think about how to present that differently. Also, this kind of experience for science grad students, this might be your only experience in teaching before you're up after a postdoc for a faculty position. So this is a chance for you to experiment a little bit on what it means to teach and try to change up your technique a little bit. And of course, consult whoever's in charge of the labs for if you have a radical idea, especially if it's going off the book, you want to make sure you can do something that makes sense for what the students have to learn, but try to use it as your own experimental test bed. Especially if you get to teach more than one section, you can do things a little differently and see what works and what doesn't work. In the top, that was the bottom and middle actually. So the top and middle, I say here, oh gosh, I had one more idea I wanted to, oh yeah, you're of course closer in age, you're closer in style to your students. You can communicate things to them in a very different way from the way the faculty communicate. We're a little bit more abstracted, we're older, we have been typically the top 20% of of any random class, and you're trying to teach to 100% of that class, right? So you can bring things that came from someone who was in the top 20% decades ago to now you're closer in age, you can see what struggles have happened in your classes and your classmates and try to bring some of that experience to your students. So that's a little bit of tasting there. I'll pass it along.
Okay. All right. Does everyone have a pen? Yes? Okay, write this down. 3 words. It's a motto. I'll wait. Go ahead. All right. How many of you are procrastinators? I mean, come on. Right? It happens. As we just talked about a minute ago, you're going to have your own work in your courses. Plus, you've got this job, this position. Here are the 3 words. Touch it once. Write it down. Touch it once. It's a motto. Okay. So, this came to me from someone else who has had a very high position here at the University of Alabama, very busy man, and his motto was touch it once. And I try to do this. In other words, don't put things off. If an email comes across your desk, your computer from a student, respond. Don't let it kind of fall back under 50 other emails. If you have grades in front of you, just go ahead and get it out of the way and put them in the grade book online. Do what you need to do and kind of think of it as throwing monkeys off your back, right? You've got a lot to do. You just want to pitch those things, get rid of it, not have to go home and fret and worry about it because that work pile is piling up. One of the things that I pride myself in is that I am pretty good at responding quickly to students' emails because I don't want to get overwhelmed by anything. So as a TA, from a director's position, it's going to make your life easier if you kind of adopt this touch it once. Hey man, it's in front of me, let me do it and move on to the next thing. It helps you in the long run, it helps us in the long run, because you know what? We are guided by deadlines just as well. We have to put in all of the midterm grades, or someone comes down from above and gets onto us. Therefore, we don't need to be after you at the very last minute trying to get you to update all of those grades, all of that attendance, if attendance matters in that class. So just think about this. Touch it once, get it done. Don't let things build up on you. Life will be so much easier.
I would say, as my final tip, I would say, sounds simple, but communicate up and down the chain of the cake and provide feedback. Communicate up the chain. Sometimes I have TAs that say nothing to me for 8 months. And then they'll be like, oh, I had this terrible thing happen, or I want to hear it. I want to hear it. I want to hear the feedback about, I don't think the students got this. I don't think that went very well. Fine. We are totally capable of taking criticism. That is the one thing we can do. We will decide, can we adapt the course to your suggestion? So I think courteous suggestions and feedback are appreciated. I think we all agree with that. And communicate downwards. We have a lot of deadlines in our accounting course. I never think, if it's appropriate in your course, I never think it's a problem to send a reminder email, or at the beginning of class to do 3 minutes of announcements, and at the end of class, 1 minute of announcements. We're all so busy. I never think it hurts to repeat it. It also saves you the hassle of later when someone forgets an assignment. You can say, I love to be able to say, I reminded you at the beginning of class, I reminded at the end of class, I sent you an email. It kind of protects yourself as well. But keep communicating downwards, reminding them the things that are going on. Communicate upwards, providing feedback, because actually we do value what you think. And I've had students tell me things that completely changed the course, and I was just like, oh, really? I had no idea. I don't teach the lab. I don't know. So communicate up and down.
Okay, then my parting advice before we start listening to your questions will be a big challenge. Teach the students how to self-evaluate. I find the biggest trouble I have are with students who think they're doing well or think they're doing okay, and the end of the semester comes around and they're not, and they have all sorts of problems and all sorts of complaints and things that if only I could improve their grade, which of course I'm being fair to everyone and I'm not going to be able to adjust a student's grade because they ask me. But if they catch problems earlier in the semester, I can help. I can figure out what's going wrong, I can give them strategy points. Same thing you can do with your students, but really, even though they might get all their grades and all their things online and know exactly how they're doing, try to get them to be aware of what it means to have a passing grade or a failing grade on one lab, or how many labs are going to be in the final average, and how to do that calculation and make sure you're sort of keeping up with some of the students who look like maybe they're getting it in class, but then they're getting low scores. So try to target students who might benefit in the middle of the semester from a change of direction, but really try to teach students how to self-evaluate. That's got to be the biggest skill that I haven't figured out yet, but I'm working on it.
Okay, I have to have one more thing. Okay, but you reminded me of this. A TA of mine did this about 3 years ago, and it turned out to be one of the most beneficial things for the graduate teaching assistants. At midterm, he gave everybody a little sheet of paper, and he said, what one thing is going well in this lab, and what one thing would you like to change? And they didn't have to put their name on it. It was just 2 questions. He, even cut up a sheet of paper, printed it off, cut it in thirds, handed it out to everybody, let them fill out the one thing they liked about lab, the one thing they didn't like about lab. And he went back, he read them all. He went back and he said, you know what, this is what everybody's liking, and these are some things I can't change these, but this is something we could work on. The students felt empowered. They felt empowered, and they really appreciated that TA. Oh, he's listening to us. He really cares about our experience in this lab. So that might be a great tool for you to do, whether anybody else in your department is doing that or not. It just might be a nice way, midway, just like you're talking about students midway for you to get some feedback. Yeah, it was great. All right, so we're going to open it up to you. And if you have some questions, and it can be just kind of whatever you're thinking about, ask us about labs, concerns, scenarios, whatever. Yes, sir.
Are we allowed to offer extra credit, or is that, frowned upon?
Okay, did you hear his question? In the back? No? Yes? He asked if you're, as a lab instructor, able to offer extra credit.
No. Okay. The key is, yeah, just right now. The key, you guys are teaching labs with a lot of people. If you deviate and treat anyone special, we are dead. We are a unit that must move together. Everyone must be treated exactly the same.
unless there's something very serious, like a car accident or a death in the family, and that would have gone to the top anyways. No, and that's that I tell you, it makes life so much better because you have no judgment calls that are your problem. And you know, kind of to reiterate it at this point, when that student does come with the death of a father or something terrible happening, I would discuss it with the director, and then you can defer deadlines, their decisions. But I think the minute you start treating anyone differently, your job gets awful.
I will just add that it's all based on the syllabus. So if the syllabus says there's no extra credit, there's no extra credit. If the syllabus says, you know, maybe if there are 10 labs in the semester and they complete 9 and the lowest one's dropped, then that's something to clarify and make sure they understand. It's not really extra credit, but the policy in the syllabus is basically like a contract. You'll probably hear that in your workshop in other sessions or legal or, you know, somewhere. If it's in there, you can do it, but typically for labs, we don't tend to have extra credit, I think. But again, it should be in the syllabus if it's allowed.
Okay, and the other thing is, I've had this with a lot of TAs. Can I offer extra credit? And sometimes I'll say yes, and sometimes no. But here's the thing, you know, it is dependent on the case. So you have a student who might have had mono and missed out on some extra credit opportunity that everyone else had. You know, go to the director, say, can I offer it to this one individual? As long as the director knows. But here is another great point about this. You are teaching a lab that probably 10 other people are teaching that same exact lab, and Susie, who's in your lab, is friends with Johnny, who's in her lab. And when you give Susie an extra credit opportunity that she's not giving Johnny, then Johnny's going to complain. And they're going to go to her and say, well, his lab is offering them extra credit. And so you just kind of have to, you want to be benevolent and charitable. I know, I get it. But it is case by case. Go to the director and ask. Okay, great question. Next.
No prizes.
That's right.
We
No
have
bonus
nothing for
points.
you.
No bonus points. Go ahead.
Typically, do students go to the professor to ask questions during office hours, or does the professor put that responsibility on the TA?
So for the labs, I always defer to the lab instructors, but it really, again, depends on the style of the class. Often the student can go to both. So especially if they didn't get an understanding of something from one direction. But definitely talk to the professor or your directors or your organizers to make sure you understand the policy. But in general, if you're responsible for the grading, in my physics classes, for instance, I want the lab instructor to really give the feedback about what went into that grade and how things were done, and if there was a mistake, to troubleshoot that before coming to me. But I'm happy to field the questions, but then I'll then consult the instructor.
Yeah, I think across the board, what you're going to see is the answers both. And some students are going to feel more comfortable with you, and some are going to want to go to us. For example, in our labs, we have TA office hours and we have professor office hours, and they can go and ask questions. But the one thing I do know is you will get questions in your labs before and after. So you will be asked a lot of questions, some of which you don't feel ready to answer, and you can always defer them.
Yeah, I mean, you will have office hours just like we have office hours. You know, for instance, I'm teaching a large lecture in the fall of 222. Well, then that large lecture, and that's just one of them, but that one is broken down into 10 different labs. So then 22 people are in Chelsea's lab. Well, part of her responsibility is to get those 22 people comfortable with each other and comfortable with her so that they can ask questions and they can go to her for help, because that's where the active learning is. On the other hand, I really want you all to encourage students to come and talk to me. And what tends to happen is you're going to find the students are afraid. They're afraid of the big people, you know, the talking heads at lecture. And students are going to bring you things that honestly you don't want to deal with. And I'm not talking about assignments, I'm talking about life. That you just think, what the heck? And so you want to encourage them. You know what? Dr. Chilcott really is a nice person. She's not gonna, carve you up. And she's a mom, and she's a good person to talk to. And maybe you facilitate them making an appointment with the director. But yes, as far as the active learning, you're kind of and that's great experience for you as far as leadership. Okay. Yes, sir.
This one is a little out of the topic, but what if you find hints of plagiarism in the assignments? Like, for example, they change the variables to student any problems.
Okay.
Do it directly.
Okay, in accounting, this is certainly common. It's called academic misconduct. We're all aware of it. Every syllabus will have a policy about academic misconduct, and the person in charge of your labs will have talked to you about academic misconduct. I think across the board, I think what you will find is you will have to communicate ASAP to the person in charge of your labs. Again, I think it goes along with you have to document. This is what I prefer. Document what, for example, if you were monitoring a quiz and you saw two people, the more information you can give me, the better off we are. But the good news is at the end of the day, it is my job to prosecute if I want and submit it. So you provide information as a witness. When you're grading two papers and they look similar, that happens, it will happen probably. Then the good news is all you are is gathering evidence and turning it in. It's kind of a good position because at the end of the day, you don't have to get in a confrontation. You don't have to be the one who is the bad guy. I just saw this, I just noticed this. So I would say report it as quickly as possible and in as much detail as possible.
I also mentioned, and even when I see something like this, like I think students have cheated on an exam, it goes up to the dean's office. So it's the sort of thing where you absolutely never accuse. You just gather the information, you just send it up the chain, and then the next chain, they send it all the way up. And if it's bad enough, typically the deans are the ones who actually make the decisions.
Okay, and going back to
Communication. I probably don't need a microphone. I know I'm loud. All right. Going back to communication, creating shared meaning. This is something we just had a faculty orientation that we have to do every fall. Anyway, all-day meeting. One of the things that the person in our college who's in charge of academic misconduct, she made a great point. And she said, you know what? Once again, it's great to say at the beginning of the course, hey guys, we all know what academic misconduct maybe is, and yes, it's in your syllabus, but let's talk about what it looks like in this course. Because sometimes you need to say ahead of time. For example, in public speaking, super area for plagiarism. Constant, right? Because the sorority has a bank of old speech, and the fraternities have a banks, files of everybody else who took public speaking, their persuasive speaking outlines, et cetera, et cetera. And so they love to just kind of tweak a thing or two, or maybe not. Or they get online and find a persuasive speech outline and copy and paste. I mean, seriously. So it's much easier to say at the beginning of the lab, this is what plagiarism looks like in this class. If you get sorority sister Jane's old outline, that's plagiarism. We want it to be original to you. If you go online and copy and paste, so just articulating what it means in that class may help you to kind of prevent some of it ahead of time. Because guess what? Automatically you're telling them, we know what it is, and we'll be looking for it.
Looks like we have time for just one more.
Maybe?
Okay, one question. Yes, ma'am.
What do you do with the student who comes to you at the end of the semester and is like in tears because they're failing and they want you to fix it?
That's never happened.
That happens.
5 minutes.
Once or twice a semester, I get that. And I just have to explain my job is to be as fair as possible. I talk about the syllabus, the first class period. I try to give as much feedback and give the grades through Blackboard, online, and do everything I can to help the students know where they are. And there's just so little I can do. Now, again, if it's a situation that you feel like you can't handle, absolutely send it up to the director. But the first line of defense pretty much is, I try to be fair, and here are what your grades are, and this is how your assessment, how it translates to a letter grade.
I'm going to get a t-shirt that says I ruin lives, because I've been told that several times. Here is what I tell myself, and I want you to take this with you. The University of Alabama is something we're proud of. If you come to this school and everybody gets through with an A or a B, this university means nothing. This is what I've told myself every semester. Everybody that comes here is not going to make it through, and that is the way it is. If it was like that, this place is devalued and means nothing. So you've got to remember, your job is, you had to go through this and work hard to get where you are. If we just start sailing people through that did not meet the requirements that were set out, this place goes down the tubes, and people don't respect your alma mater anymore either. So you have a big job to keep us respectable.
Yeah, and bottom line is, you may be ruining their life, but you're not doing them any favors. And one more time, I'm going back to it. Communication is the key. Communication is the key. So what you say to them at the beginning of the semester is, people, don't be coming to me at the end of the semester. Don't be coming to me at the end of the semester and say, what? I missed 20? I don't. It's happened. It's happened more than once. I didn't know that I missed 20 lectures and labs. I didn't know that lab and lecture attendance was that big of a grade and that they were combined, or that I missed so-and-so. And just tell them on the front end, don't come to me. You're not coming to me at the end of the semester telling me that, oops, I didn't realize I was failing. And you just tell them, this is your responsibility. You get a midterm grade. I'm giving you your grades back as quickly as possible. Part of being professionalism, you need to know where you are, and I am not retroactively passing you. Say it at the beginning. Don't have to say it at the end. When they come to you at the end, say, oh, what'd I say? Don't even come in this door. All right, if you have any questions as you're going out, feel free to stop at the table and ask us.
Have fun with it, guys.